Everybody, and thanks for joining us for our webinar on the evolution of higher education marketing. This is Brenda Harms, and I'm going to be walking us through this webinar today. We're delighted to have so many of you joining us really from all over the country. We have great representation kind of coast to coast today, so thanks for being with us. Obviously, this is an important topic, and we're pleased to be able to give you a bit of a high-level overview about some of what's new in relationship to higher ed marketing. With me today is Becky Vardaman, our Senior Vice President of Strategy, and Becky is going to be able to answer or assist me in answering any real specific questions that you have in relationship to some of the digital aspects I'm going to talk through today. Just for the sake of this presentation and making sure I get through all of our content, if you could please hold your questions to the end or make a note of them, or go ahead and type them into the chat box when questions do come up, but please know we're going to answer those at the end of the presentation. Also, if for some reason I don't get through all of the questions at the very end, we will absolutely respond to those via email after the presentation. Please know that this presentation will be sent to you probably within the next day or two, and the audio recording will be with that, so you don't have to frantically take notes throughout. Let's go ahead and dive in a little bit. One of the things that we like to do at the very beginning of these webinars is just give you a real brief insight of Converge Consulting. We really pride ourselves in assisting colleges and universities with higher education marketing, but there's a lot of firms who do that sort of work. Probably what makes us unique, or one of our points of differentiation, is that we really focus from a digital perspective. We're very interested in measurable marketing, and so marketing that's very, very measurable is often digital. It doesn't have to be, but it's often digital. So that's a big piece of the type of work that we do. We also have noticed just over the course of the time that we've been in business, probably 85% of our client base are institutions that have adult or grad programs that they're looking to increase. Digital marketing specifically seems to relate very, very closely for those more non-traditional student audiences. So we also, though, I say that, and then I'll also say, but we're also helping a lot of institutions with university-wide initiatives as well. So it's quite a bit of a mix of both. But I know today, just from looking at the list of who's involved in our webinar, we have a lot of adult student-serving programs and graduate student-serving programs. So glad to have you with us, and I think you'll find a lot of the information here really helpful. Without a doubt, the context of higher education has changed quite a bit over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, and many, many things have contributed to that. This is just one little snippet of a far larger infographic, but I think these couple of points on this infographic really help us to understand how much the landscape has changed. One of the things that has definitely shifted all of higher education was really the advent and the mainstreaming of online courses. And by online courses, I truly do just mean courses. I'm not speaking of MOOCs here, but just specifically online courses. So much of our education and our delivery mode has shifted to online today that it has really shaken up how we think of higher education, and that certainly has had an impact on our marketing efforts. We know that obviously there's a tremendous conversation right now around student loans and student debt, and that does apply both to traditional undergrad students as well as the adult student market. It's made our marketing job a little bit more difficult in that we are being forced now by this national conversation to speak more in relationship to dollars and cents and outcomes, which was something that higher education historically had really kind of shied away from. For those of us who reach out to adult markets or graduate student markets, we know that the advent or the coming of age of the for-profit industry has really shifted things in relationship to our marketing and our recruitment efforts. Approximately $3 billion a year is spent by for-profit institutions in relationship to marketing and recruitment. If you want to do, so what does that mean to us as, I think, primarily, actually entirely, not-for-profit institutions and public and private on this webinar. So at most typical private or public institutions, the marketing budget is between 1% and 3% of overall operating budgets. Once in a while, we'll stumble across an institution that pushes closer to 5% of their overall operating budget is related to marketing, but typically it's that 1 to 3, and I've certainly seen institutions with just with an institution about a month ago that is less than 0.5% of their overall operational budget is allocated to marketing. If you compare that to the for-profit industry, for-profit industries typically approximately 30% of their operating budget is spent on marketing. So that is a piece of the difference that has shifted the landscape and the competitor set dramatically for institutions of higher ed. For those of you who work with adult students now, you know that the bulk of students today in higher education are actually more non-traditional in nature. And interestingly, the dollars that are being raised, and I need to move more quickly, I'm stuck on my first slide here, the dollars that are being raised in higher education have really increased as well. $31 billion in 2012 were raised in advancement fundraising in higher ed. So our industry has changed dramatically, and consequently that has had huge implications for those of us who work in the marketing end of things. And several times during the course of this webinar, you're going to hear me talk about marketing and recruitment. I have a very hard time, for any of you who have ever heard me speak before, I have a very hard time separating these two because I really do think of them as being in a very close relationship with one another. I always say you're dating. It's far more than just hand-holding, you're dating. Marketing and recruitment seamlessly need to have the ability to work together, and if they don't at your institution, there's obviously going to be some struggles as a result. So while this webinar will focus on marketing efforts, please know that the marketing efforts we're going to talk about today tie very, very closely to recruitment and kind of what's next in relationship to recruitment. One of the things that's really shifted marketing in higher education, but really marketing overall, is inbound marketing. And inbound marketing is really that notion of bringing people to you rather than pushing information at people, more pulling people your direction. And inbound marketing really connects closely with several elements. Search engine optimization, and we're going to dig in and talk about that much further, paid media, social media efforts, as well as analytics. Now, there's another piece of inbound marketing that's fairly significant, and that's the content piece. That in and of itself is a huge webinar all by itself. So I didn't touch much on content development within the context of this webinar, but certainly is also a huge piece of inbound marketing. Let's do a quick definition here. So inbound marketing, as I said, is really pulling people to you rather than pushing information at people. So it's earning the attention of your prospective student pool. And there's many, many ways to do this. We've seen this done through recruitment in relationship to different recruitment efforts for years, but marketing is really starting to get this figured out now. Part of that is making yourself easy to be found, and from a digital perspective, that ties in closely with SEO. It's also drawing prospective students to our website based on some of the content that we have there, offering them something on our institutional site or within their microsite that is as unique and really is something that you can advertise the item that perhaps they're going to get on your website rather than just something as generic as perhaps more information. This is an interesting illustration kind of those pillars of inbound marketing. Social media is certainly a piece of that, and it's one that we will touch on just briefly as well today. Analytics is a big part of that, SEO, and then, as I said, content strategy. Let's dive in deeper to SEO here. First and foremost, I want to say that most colleges and universities throughout the country are not in as good of shape as they believe that they are in relationship to search engine optimization. Mainly because when I talk with schools about SEO, this is the line that I usually hear. Oh, we did a great job doing SEO on our site when we redesigned our site several years ago. Search engine optimization changes radically and frequently. And really SEO is something that kind of very much like a plant. It needs ongoing nurturing and ongoing attention. So SEO isn't something that's like a one and done. Oh, we've done that and now we're done with that, but really an ongoing process. We know that schools that really focus on paying close attention to their SEO on a regular basis and that ongoing process have a much better chance of ranking higher both organically as well as it benefits their paid media. A couple of interesting stats here, and I'll go ahead and fill in the answers. About 75% of searchers never go beyond page 1 in search results. So if you think about sitting down and doing a quick Google search, most of us, not all of us, but most of us will only probably pay attention to what's on page 1. And in reality, if you're kind of old like me, you think about what's above the fold, what's above the line of the bottom of our computer screen is really where most search action, if you will, takes place. 53% of all searchers click on what comes up first. So really, really critical to be in not just those first maybe 4 positions, but really to be number 1 if at all possible. And then 94% of those who do search actually choose an organic display over a paid display. And we'll speak more to that here in a minute. So the goal behind SEO is really to be found wherever and whenever a prospective student is searching for you. And that in part gets into taking a look at that idea of getting found in keywords. For all of you who sit down in your location right now and type in your institution's name, guess what? Lo and behold, you're going to come up first, and that's an obvious statement. But one of the things that I find challenging is a lot of times when you get outside of the marketing department, perhaps within some of the academic schools that you work with, perhaps at senior level, they're not aware of that. And so they say, well, look, when we do a search on us, we come up first, and that's great. Very few people who are out doing search, particularly at the adult and grad level, are necessarily searching with your key or your brand words, your institutional branded words in mind. They're searching much more generally than that. They're searching on MBA programs in Kansas City, not a specific institution's name in Kansas City that offers MBA. And so being able to be found is a critical element of this. SEO is contributed to by a number of things. We used to believe, or we used to think, and actually this used to be more true than it is today, that the content of your page could in and of itself give you enough SEO guts, if you will, to have great organic search. That is shifting more and more, and much of what now needs to be in place properly is a lot of the back-end stuff that the average consumer of the web doesn't see, but is really taking care of the back-end details. So page titling, obviously, yes, within keywords and content, but also title tags, meta tags. We also have to look at things like linking, excuse me, linking and how Google is evaluating the content that you are offering on your website, your institutional website, and ranking it against other content that's of similar nature. So we know that a lot of the link structure that you have and linking and likes and retweets that you have within the context of your website certainly matters. We also know that Google pays attention to things like images, maps, videos, the news that you're putting out on a regular basis, blogs, that fresh content, as well as social sharing. So all of it is important. There's not just one piece. The content on your web page is just a small piece of a broader puzzle today. A couple of other things just for you to note. Google really does pay close attention to video. And video is something that to some degree is kind of sexy in relationship to higher ed marketing today. And every school thinks, oh, we're going to have some great videos and that'll solve all our problems. A couple of quick notes about videos. Higher ed videos, number one, first and foremost, listen, need to be brief. Certainly under 3 minutes, but I would even say probably stick more around the 1 to 1.5 minute video segments really seem to be what people have attention span for. And you can pay close attention to that and really begin to evaluate how much of your videos schools are watching. But Google does pay attention to videos, make sure that they're properly tagged and you're putting them out there in a proper manner. But this really does help you from an SEO perspective. Another quick, and I think most of us know this, but being aware of the fact that YouTube is the second largest search engine. So even if you and I might always go out to Google or Bing or, fill in the name of your search engine, know that especially if you're attracting a younger audience, a 22 to 25-year-old audience in your adult market, you're certainly going to see people going out to YouTube and searching there. So short in relationship to link, title, and description is really helpful. Optimize your titles, your tags, and your descriptions. Make sure you tag your influencers and make sure you ask people within your social media community to like your video wherever you're displaying it. Most institutions are very well as their branded keywords, but many institutions are not as familiar with what their unbranded keywords are. And your unbranded keywords are the searches that are being done, the words that are being searched that are bringing people to your site most actively. Obviously, the University of Brenda Harms would be bringing people to my personal institutional website quickly, but what other things are people searching on? that are really bringing folks in. And I want to show you a quick example here that's a little bit fun. So this was actually an SEO report that we did for an institution that we were working with. And you see a number of the branded keywords there, Parsons, the new school. This is the institution, but I want to draw your attention to item 4 there. Alba, and I apologize, not certain on how to say her last name, was a huge source of impressions for this institution, and we were trying to figure out why. Interestingly, this is a faculty member at their institution, and that's good, and it was helpful to know, but really couldn't quite uncover why this particular faculty member was getting this type of search volume. Interestingly, once we did some further analysis, what we discovered was, yes, this person was indeed a faculty member, but someone with the exact same name was also a model. And so obviously just a different sort of search, and so understanding that is critically important. Is there much you can do about that? No, absolutely not. But understanding that even though that unbranded keyword really seems to be driving a lot of traffic to your site, yes, there are a lot of searches done around that issue, but if you go over and look at actual clicks in relationship to the data, which you can see there, 40,000 impressions, but then only 70 clicks, clearly folks were looking for our gal in the swimsuit, perhaps not our faculty member. Let's talk link building just quickly here for a minute. When we think about trying to bring traffic to our site and trying to help our overall optimization so that organically we rank more strongly, a big piece of that is who we link to and who links to us. So creating an opportunity for a strong user link, I'm going to actually go ahead to our next slide here, in relationship to link domain. So if we put out a post, a blog post by one of our faculty members or something like that, and we have the opportunity to have a really strong link, for example, like the Wall Street Journal link to our article or our blog post, that is obviously a very strong link that has great quality ranking, and that in and of itself helps our overall SEO. So when you have those opportunities to link out to and have things from out in the rest of the digital world link back to you, you increase that overall SEO capability and your overall findability for your prospective student audience as well. Okay, quick final note on SEO, and again, happy to take questions at the end about that, but I do want to make a quick note. Converge does free webinars every month, and we actually have a second webinar this month towards the end of the month, I believe May 24th, I believe. Sorry, I'm sitting here in our office. We think it's May 24th. We're double checking that right now for you. But we have a free webinar on SEO specifically, and that might be worth taking a look at if you want to dig a little more deeply into organic search rankings. Let's spend a minute on paid media. And I am going to spend a minute on paid media because I know a number of the institutions that are joining us today are spending money on pay-per-click type campaigns or doing some digital advertising. Some are doing that through vendors, some are doing that independently. And you might be doing it really, really well independently, but I want to caution you on a couple of things. One of the worries that I have when I hear from institutions, oh, we're doing some paid media or we're doing some advertising, we have some digital ads. One of the questions that I automatically try to ask right after that is, and where are you bringing them? What's the landing page that they come to if indeed they click on that ad that you're putting out there? I believe when you take a look at paid media, the first place that you need to stop and really look closely is where you're bringing them. So if I have an ad out there and it is for, I'm just going to pick on MBA, and it's for the Brenda Harms University MBA program, if I click on that, what's the landing page they come to? Is the landing page my institutional website on the MBA? Or is it a specifically designed landing page that was created with one task in mind? And that one task being, let's get them to inquire and share their information with us. Often we see schools just driving folks out to their website with those ads, and it is not a best practice, and I will just be candid and say it's not a good use of money. Most people that I've ever talked to, I ask this all the time when I speak, how many of you are happy with your institutional website? And I rarely have any schools raise their hands. If you're driving your paid advertising out to your institutional website, you're putting them into no man's land. So design specific landing pages, utilizing best practices with clear call to action as to what you want them to do next, and then make sure that those pages are hosted in a way that kind of double checks for and ensures that if something does happen at your institutional level site, that those landing pages don't go down. The actual advertising, the actual ads that you're placing out there can be in a number of different places. Obviously, I listed Google AdWords here and Bing, but what you're advertising is also a big piece of this. So when you think about putting up some paid ads, understanding what your goal is going to be a really important piece of that. And so often in marketing, we often start with the tactic. I want a billboard. I want digital and media ads. I want X. And really the first question needs to be, what are we trying to accomplish here? So for example, if you are doing a paid media ad and your goal is to drive people to an open house or an event on campus, that's a very different conversation than if the goal is to drive people to inquire about a specific master's program. So just understand what it is and then where you're placing those ads. Because believe it or not, interestingly, for smaller budgets, sometimes Google AdWords are not the end-all be-all. So really important to assess and evaluate. We also know that there's other places where you can do some digital advertising, and a lot of schools get very excited about the digital advertising on social media. But again, you have to make sure that it makes sense for your specific audience. Facebook and LinkedIn are two very popular ones, especially if you're in connected or trying to connect to an adult or graduate market. LinkedIn seems to be very, very popular because it is so prevalent. We're going to talk a bit more about LinkedIn in a few minutes because it's so prevalent among professionals. You also have a much greater ability to really target and segment your audience on LinkedIn, so something to consider there. I really quickly want to mention remarketing simply because it's become so much more effective over the course of the last year or two. Today, for the advertising, paid media advertising that Converge is managing for a number of schools, we're seeing just as good of results, if not better results, from our remarketing campaign in relationship to conversions as we are in our initial campaign. Part of that is that ability to stay in front of people over a period of time. So truly, if you're doing ad placement without a remarketing campaign, I think you're really selling yourself short, and it's certainly worth the investment. The analysis that you do on your paid media campaign is perhaps your most critical step. Remember at the beginning of the webinar, one of the things I talked about and spoke to was that need for return on marketing investment. Paid media gives you that opportunity in a huge way, and really taking a monthly look, if not more often than that, but look at the data that you are getting back based on your paid media campaign. The second thing I hate to hear at schools is, oh, we've got some ads out there. Great, what do your results look like? Oh, I really don't know. If you're not doing the analysis and you're not looking at the data, again, you're spending money and not knowing. And I don't really fault marketers in higher ed for not doing the next step, because really in a number of the different types of media that we utilize, mediums that we utilize, there is no next step. You put up a billboard. Maybe if you're lucky, a few people comment on it to you. Maybe if you're really lucky, your president calls and says that someone commented to him or her on it, and that's it. But with digital media, you really have an opportunity to dig in and do the analysis and look at data in a much more aggressive way. This is part of the beauty of digital media. And it's really something that as marketers in higher ed, we have to force ourselves into doing to better understand the results from this investment. So understanding the impressions that you got, the clicks that you got, the leads or the conversions that you got on your ads, understanding what your goal was in the first place, those things all need to be evaluated on a regular basis. And I would also just throw out, we also have to set reasonable and realistic goals in relationship to lead conversion. A lot of schools are investing right now in paid media with the hope of really generating and driving a lot of leads, because every school believes they need more leads right now. And while paid media will certainly drive leads to you, please understand and know that the lead generation capabilities for digital media have shifted pretty dramatically in the last several years. First and foremost, if you're competing in an area that has for-profit institutions, they are able to outspend you in relationship to digital marketing in ways that are difficult for those of us on this webinar to even understand. Also know that we haven't actually created more market demand, so the pie is still the same size. The number of leads that are going to go out in the Des Moines, Iowa market, let's pretend that they're going to be 100. They're going to be 100 whether you are or are not doing digital media and doing paid advertising. So if there's only 100 leads that are going out from Des Moines, Iowa today on May 1st, you being in the game means you're going to get a slice of the pie now. If you're not in the game, you get none of those leads. But you being in the game just means you get a slice of 100. If you have historically been doing paid media for a long period of time and you've seen your leads kind of begin to decline a little bit, that's actually not unusual as more and more schools have now gotten into paid media. Doesn't mean you don't need to be there. It just means you need to manage your expectations. So really, when you think about paid media, it's far more than just we've placed some ads. Oh, we have some ads out there. It's really a much broader process that I want to encourage you to start from that where are we driving them to question and then work your way through. Let's shift to social media here quickly. You know, this is probably like world's most shared piece of information, but Facebook really continues to have quite a stronghold in relationship to overall size and scope. And yes, indeed, it would be third after China and India if it were its own country, which is an interesting little tidbit. One of the things, though, that we know for the adult and grad market is that Facebook advertising and being present with Facebook seems to take on a little bit of a different role, particularly as we try to speak to the more adult market. One of the hardest things about social media right now is that there is a ton of it. And probably one of the most frequently asked questions when Facebook became big was, well, what's going to be the next big thing? We want to get there before they, before everybody else gets there. And that'd be great if I had that crystal ball, but unfortunately I don't. The hardest thing in relationship to social media is identifying what you can do that you can do well. Because being present in 10 different places in relationship to social media and spreading your human resource too thin to do a good job in any of those forums is not a wise choice. If you can only do 2 or 3 things well, just do 2 or 3 things. Don't try to do 10 and do a poor job across the map. We are going to spend a minute talking about some of the bigger social media venues. Obviously, Facebook is huge. I want to specifically comment, again, just because I know a lot of the folks involved today are those who are connected to that grad and adult market. Facebook is a great opportunity, to communicate things like weather closings and those sorts of things and reminding people to register for class. But it's also a great place for you to communicate some of your success stories, professional accomplishments, putting out there the opportunity for people to talk about their promotions they just received at work. All of those things create a secondary level of messaging for those of us in the marketing field that speaks to, I'm attending Brenda Harms University and I just got this promotion at work. It allows your institution to connect to something that we know is critically important to the prospective adult student audience. Why do many adults go back to either get their graduate degree or finish an undergraduate degree? It's that promotion at work. So you can leverage that in relationship to social media. You can really also utilize a combination of content. It doesn't always just have to be you posting announcements about things like it's time to register for class, but also including some nice video links to graduation. It's that time of year, it's graduation time of year, to video links, to photos, to polls, different events that you have going on campus, and like I mentioned, those success stories. It's important to encourage not just the prospective student audience, but also your current students and staff and faculty and alums to become engaged with that as well, so that there's a good amount of activity. Invite your prospective students to peer in, if you will, on the institution via a social media channel or via Facebook, especially if you have, for example, a very niche Facebook page for the MBA program as one example. Invite prospects to really take a look at what's going on in some of the types of conversations, some of those success stories, and those sorts of things within that. And then focus on goals of engagement and reach, not just likes. You want people coming and you want people engaged with what you're putting out there from a content perspective. We know that Twitter has really gained in traction in the last year. And it's very, very important that institutions on a regular basis evaluate their Twitter accounts. It's very easy, Twitter, I think especially, it's really easy for somebody to get really excited about this particular medium and start their account and do a really nice job on it for a period of time and then kind of taper off. And we know that continuous and ongoing conversation in relationship to Twitter specifically is really, really important for engagement. Look at growing your followers here as well and encourage your prospective students to pay attention here as well. Again, because we know a lot of our client base is focused on that grad and adult market, I did want to include a little information here on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is huge and growing, and it's viewed as a professional network. And so it really does make sense for colleges and universities who are trying to engage with professionals in various fields to have a strong LinkedIn presence. I think for most institutions right now, if there's one social media venue or forum that I think you could probably do better at, it would be in relationship to LinkedIn, because clearly the data indicates that this is where your audience or your future audience is going to be. And even if you're an institution that focuses purely on the traditional undergraduate market, it's where your alumni are going to be. So again, a great place for engagement across the map. We're going to spend a few minutes talking about analytics, and like I said, I am trying to keep our presentation moving along so that we will have a bit of time towards the end here for some questions. One of the hard pieces, I think, for people who work outside of the marketing spectrum and work specifically outside of digital media is to understand that web analytics is not, it's never a finished product. It's always an evaluation of current online behavior with the idea of continuous improvement in mind. So you're never, quote unquote, done with web analytics. It really is this notion of a process. The beauty of web analytics is that when they are set up properly on an institutional website, you really do have the ability to connect all the pieces of the puzzle. So for example, if I send out an email blast to my prospects inviting them to come to an open house, we really do have the ability, and analytics can tell us, did they get the email, did they take a peek, and from that email, did they engage with the landing page that we had set up? Did they then go a next step further and go and look at the academic program that we're offering or promoting at the various open houses? Did they fill out the inquiry form? Did they go to the open house and fill out the form indicating they were coming in? Did they apply? Your analytics has the ability to walk you through this as long as your goals are set up properly in relationship to your analytics. And that's where we see most institutions struggling, is in relationship to their goals. As I said at the very beginning, web analytics is really a process. It's not simply a tool, and there's not an end point. It is a continuous process, and yes, we as marketers hate those words. It's a continuous process. It's the brochure that's never done, if you will. It's that continuous process of measuring what you're doing, taking a look at your data, taking a look at your numbers, making tweaks and changes, going back and taking another measure, looking at how that compares to the previous measure, making some analysis, going back and changing. It really is an ongoing process. And I know for a number of you who work in higher ed who are spread very, very thin right now with way too much on your plates, the idea of something that you have to pay attention to on a continuous basis, look at on an ongoing basis, and make ongoing tweaks and changes to is really overwhelming. But this is a critical element of understanding what's going on your website. And higher ed embraced the line many years ago that your website's the most important marketing tool. If you really believe that, and I know you're all sitting there going, yep, we believe that. If you really believe that, analytics is the key to your most important marketing tool because it helps you to understand everything in relationship to your website. It allows you to measure both quantitative as well as qualitative data. It gives that sense of continuous improvement to your website, and it also can align your measurement strategy with the overall organizational strategy. What's our goal behind having this institutional website? We spend a huge amount of money developing a website. It takes a lot of human resources to keep it up to date. We make a big deal out of it when something's wrong on the website. We're so excited about it. What's our goal of having this site, and then how do we make sure that from a strategic perspective we're accomplishing those goals? And analytics is a big piece of it. Unfortunately, where many people start is with taking a look at analytics from the, 250,000 foot view. And in reality, this isn't the place where analytics starts. So if you are looking at a regular report, and this is the page that you're pulling and looking at, this, I don't want to say this doesn't tell you much, but this doesn't tell you much. This is not where analytics should begin. Analytics should begin first and foremost on what do we want to know based on user behavior on our website. So first and foremost, create a plan. And anytime you have a webinar that incorporates the use of ducks, I think you've really hit a home run. sorry, bad humor. It's been raining in Iowa for like 5 days straight, so there's ducks everywhere, even in the gutters along the sidewalks. So there you go. There's our little duck humor today. I almost said gutter humor, but that would be wrong. Okay. So what can Google Analytics do for you? It can obviously provide some comparative analysis and help you to look at trends, and that's a really critical piece of this. Becky, who's here with me during this, I've listened to her talk analytics a number of times and do a number of analytics presentations, and one of the things she always reminds our client base is that analytics doesn't allow you to put a pencil point on an issue, but it does allow you to begin to look at trends and really start to look at general directions of things are moving. The quantitative evaluation is obviously a huge piece of this, as well as the qualitative content can really be looked at in relationship to analytics. It allows you to challenge as well as validate your assumptions. So when you are looking at it, again, just from being around higher ed too long and working in higher ed, we know that this happens. We're going to redesign our website, and the people who offer lunch in your cafeteria are just convinced that their page on the website has to be designed and redesigned because it's just amazing, and that's the page that everyone looks at. And you're in your heart of hearts thinking you are not the main reason for our institutional website, but that's a really hard message to communicate. Analytics allows you to have a hard and fast answer, not just a, I don't think you're that important sort of response. So it really allows you to challenge yourself and what you believe you know about your website, but also to validate what you do know about your website and then in turn communicate that with others. I hate to say this, but it allows you to say no with some confidence rather than with an eye roll, if you will. Analytics allows you as well to really demonstrate how it is you're meeting the business goals. And again, I know it's kind of foreign language in higher ed, but your business goals in relationship to portions of your page. It's easy to see how this works in relationship to pages that look at admissions specifically. The goal in driving people to an admissions portion of your site is to get them to either inquire or fill out the application, register for the open house event. It's to take an action. How do we demonstrate that our website is actually accomplishing that goal? That's completely done within the context of the analytics. It also, lastly, allows your stakeholders to take on more ownership, if leveraged properly, of their own content within their portion of the site. If you can show to the folks at the MBA program that when a new blog goes up, they have a lot more traffic to their business, to the MBA portion of the website, that helps them to feel good about, okay, this is why I need to make this a priority, this is why I need to do this. The numbers in and of themselves rarely tell the whole story. And this is really important because a lot of times when we speak at conferences and things, somebody in the room will raise their hand and say, this is our bounce rate, is that good or bad? Well, your bounce rate on what? What's the page? What's the goal behind the page? If the goal behind the page is to have users come back over and over and over and you have a 70% returning visitor rate, is that good, is that bad? Now I have some context under which I can better evaluate the numbers. Is 2,000 page views good or bad? Well, if it was for your inquiry page and it resulted in 1,000 inquiries, I'd say it's really good. If 2,000 page views on your main institutional homepage, I'd say that's not. So again, the numbers don't tell the whole story. You really need the context and you have to understand the goal in relationship to analytics. So it's much more of a top-down approach. Just a quick couple of examples of goals, because I think sometimes when you think about what's your goal to your institutional site, people just think traffic. And not all traffic is equal. Just driving traffic to your site should never be the goal. Having traffic come to your site that actually engages with your site is more in line with an appropriate goal. So you can set up within analytics goals like people spent X amount of time on our website. And you can then take a look at, and this is just one example, then you can take a look at visit duration and begin to see how you've moved the needle based on the content that you've put within that portion of your site. So if the goal in this particular example is 180 seconds on the website, and you can see the data we're starting with on the back there is that most people actually only spend 0 to 10 seconds. How do we move the needle? How do we keep people engaged longer? And what do we want them to do while you're there? Excuse me. So sorry. Other things that you can take a look at is dig a little bit more deeply in relationship to some of your marketing campaigns that you're putting out via the web. and where you're driving people to. And this is just an example of looking at different campaign performance for a Christmas card or an alumni newsletter. But you can really begin to evaluate these against one another. Okay, it's good to know that the Christmas card is going to outperform every other effort that we put out there this year. So we really want to put time, energy, and attention into that Christmas card versus the alumni newsletter, for example. And sorry, those might have been two controversial examples there, but there you have it. The analytics also allows you to take a look at your social media metrics and helps you to better understand who is engaging with you in relationship to social media and what some of their characteristics are. And then is that the audience you're trying to reach is obviously a huge piece of the conversation there. So this is just one example in relationship to age, but there are other ways that you can dig in there as well. One of the most interesting goals that, just a quick side note here, one of the most interesting goals that we helped an institution set up recently was a school that actually had a couple of different campuses, really within a pretty tight geography, but a couple of different campuses. And part of what we looked at was how their web traffic was coming from different cities and really being able to say, okay, we've done a huge marketing blast in one of our extended campus areas. How have we seen web traffic from that city increase? So interesting goals, interesting stuff you can set up. And then the more obvious goals, you know, converting, filling out an inquiry form, signing up for something. This is the more obvious goal that I think a lot of schools have an easier time in relationship to setting up their analytics around a specific goal. When it's fill out this form, fill out, you know, go ahead and subscribe to this, this is the easier goal to set up, but there's still information that can be extracted from these goals. I know specifically in relationship to this, I'm pretty sure it's this example. This was actually a goal that we set up for an institution that has this daily gospel reflection, and they were seeing a lot of people signing up for this, and when we really went in and dug out and sorted out the analytics, what we realized was there were a lot of people subscribing to this from another country. And so then the next question unfolded, which is, well, why and how? And really being able to dig in and understand that we had alumni in that other country that were, in this particular case, obviously religiously affiliated institutions that were doing some outreach work within that community. And so they had a lot of their community members through their church, in this case, going in and filling this information out. But we were also able to make some tweaks in relationship to some of our web pages as a result, as far as showing students of that from that international location. So as I'm wrapping up here and go ahead and get ready to start typing in your questions, one of the things we have to be aware of as marketers is that the future of marketing for higher ed is going to be about being able to demonstrate return on investment. And return on investment can't just be, okay, we put up that billboard, and the company that I paid to put up that billboard told me that this many cars drive by it every day. We have to be able to demonstrate a stronger level of engagement through data. While it's always good when someone picks up the phone and calls the president and says, I heard your radio ad, or I saw your billboard, or I saw that you were a sponsor at a local, for the local baseball team. Those are great things when they happen. We love in the marketing office getting that phone call from the president who all of a sudden thinks we're doing great things because a friend of his or her called. We also, though, have to be able to look at marketing from a return on investment perspective and really say, for the dollars we spent, here were the number of people we engaged with, here were the people who actually took the action we wanted them to take, here's where we built awareness, and here's where we converted to leads. No institutions in higher ed have enough, in traditional higher ed, have enough money to spend simply for the sake of spending. And so it really is going to be about putting together clear points of measurement and then utilizing that measurement for the idea of continuous improvement. It is scary for colleges and universities that I talk to who ask me the question of, well, how much money should I be investing in digital marketing? It's scary for them if their answer right now is less than 5% of their budget, and my response is, I believe most colleges and universities are going to be investing at least 50% of their budget in digital mediums within the next year or two. That's very frightening. But when you really sit down and evaluate the numbers and the data, what do you know from digital? What do you know from other mediums? It begins to soften that blow, if you will. So the things that are measured, number one, tell a better story, help you as a marketing director to make better decisions as far as where you're going to invest or reinvest your budgets in future years. but they also help you to do improvements in relationship to some of these areas. We know that in digital media specifically, people are investing a lot of human resource and a lot of financial resource as well, but a lot of human resource. If you have a human being in your office whose main job is working with your digital media, you owe it to them to making sure you're doing the measurement properly to be able to demonstrate the continuous improvement, I think. All right, that really takes care of the content for the webinar. We have about 10 minutes left that we want to answer questions, so please feel free to go ahead and type in questions as they come up. While you are typing up those questions, I just want to do a quick plug. As you may have heard or may have gotten our email, we are offering a conference October 13th through the 15th in Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville, great city, very fun. Really, that will dig in much more deeply. I think the conversation today is kind of the 10,000-foot view of these various areas in relationship to digital marketing. If you are interested in knowing more or digging more deeply into any of these areas, we really want to encourage you to engage with us at the Converge 2014 Higher Education Marketing Conference, October 13th to the 15th in Nashville, Tennessee. Okay, I'm going to take a quick breath. I want to go ahead and start to go through and answer some questions here, and I'm probably going to grab Becky to assist me as you ask different questions as well. So our first question has come up, and I'm going to go ahead and read it, and then I think Becky's going to have a bit of information to share on this. First question, is there a good way to see how organic social media is overall increasing enrollment? And I'm going to turn that over to Becky for a second for an answer.
Hi, everybody. Actually, this is one of the most important, one of the main things that we look at when we're looking at an analytics assessment and trying to figure out what we really should be looking at in analytics instead of, page views and visits necessarily. This is exactly what Brenda was talking about when she's talking about really aligning your measurement with your institution's goals. So one of our goals is obviously going to be increasing enrollment, hopefully. So in analytics, we want to figure out how to measure that, whether it's by getting to a thank you page, whether sometimes we have to tag a button so that we know that somebody went to apply if they go off to a third party. I bet a lot of you on the phone are probably sitting there nodding yes, use a third party. So we understand that yes, the people on our website did this certain thing. The other piece of that is tying in where they came from in the first place. So we can look at all the referral information, and Google Analytics gives a really, really good social media kind of dashboard now. They've actually redone this in the past about a year, last summer it came out, with giving a lot more information on social media and making it a lot more accessible to you in the reporting. So absolutely, you can see where your organic social media is coming from, which channels in organic social media are actually driving your higher enrollment bumps and converting better on those goals. But not only with that, you can take, obviously, organic social media, but you can look at your paid social media as another channel. You can look at your cost per click advertising as a channel. You can look at your organic search results as a channel. You can look at your email marketing as a channel. So all of these things, this is a great question in really diving into the heart of what we want to do with analytics. Great question.
Great, thanks, Becky. Please feel free to type in any questions that you have as we come up here on our last couple of minutes. A quick note, because I want to piggyback a little bit on what Becky said there as far as, can we leverage the analytics to really understand how we're increasing enrollment? One of the pieces that and again, remember I said at the beginning of this presentation, it's very hard for me to separate marketing from recruitment. Driving leads is one thing, converting leads is another, but they really do work hand in hand. And I can almost guarantee you that if you have generated leads using digital media or been able to demonstrate via your analytics that you are driving traffic that is converting and saying, tell me more information or filling out those applications, one of the things you might hear back from your recruitment staff is, well, those aren't good leads or those aren't leads that convert. One of the hard things that recruitment staff have struggled with in the last few years is that, especially if they've been there a while, that back in the good old days, most of the people who inquired, well, it felt like most of the people who inquired registered for class. And there weren't many leads that had to be worked over a period of time. And so consequently, and I'm just going to say we got a little bit sloppy in the recruitment side of the house of just playing catch, if you will, just taking in the students who wanted to enroll, taking in the students who wanted to enroll. And we didn't do a lot to cultivate or nurture those students who wanted more information and wanted to think about it, wanted more information and wanted to think about it. And we're going to spend 6 months making their decision. We didn't stick with them over a period of time from a recruitment perspective. So as you're measuring your marketing efforts, part of what I want to really encourage you to do is to engage the recruitment staff to better understand what they're doing to convert leads, how long they're working with those leads over a period of time, and the long-term conversion rate. I like looking at conversion rates for leads from a year out from the time that lead came in. Not what happened that month, but what happened over the course of that year. Okay, I'm going to get off my soapbox. Another question that came in, how detailed can analytics get for small market? My college market is literally only county-wide, so can we get accurate information in relationship to analytics? And again, having Becky here in the room, I'm going to let her go ahead and share some response to that.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I think that probably, Gary, what you're getting at is probably the geography piece, right? You want to know how accurate the geography piece of analytics can be for you, because really on the whole, having a small market, you're going to have just as accurate analytics as anybody else. It brings up a really good point, though, about the way that the geography works in pulling in cities or metro areas in Google Analytics specifically. Basically, it's going to be looking at IP addresses and service providers to try to understand where somebody's logging into your website with. Brenda mentioned really focusing on trends and focusing on some of those things. This is one of those pieces that can very easily be tricked in Google Analytics. If you're logging in from a major institution, from a company, from any large organization that's connected to the internet, that's going to be a pretty stable IP address, and it's going to give us pretty good metrics. The one that sometimes can throw us is, and I've seen multiple cases of this, is the individual user. So the Comcast, the MediaCom, those ones. We do get a little bit of variance. It's still on the whole, we're going to see large trends that are very accurate, but there will be a little bit of variance with some of those individual providers. And the reason that is because they use temporary IP addresses. My poor father, I'm going to bring him into this. One of his, he's a retired engineer from the avionics field, and he likes to do this test every now and then and see, okay, where's my IP address actually routing through? And he tells me, Becky, I'm in Florida right now, but my IP address says I'm in Louisiana. So sometimes that happens with the individual MediaCom or Comcast or those types of providers, but on the whole, it's going to be very accurate. And again, look at that trend information. And actually, I need to correct myself. I told Brenda earlier that our webinar for SEO is on the 24th. It is actually on the 20th. We hope you guys join us for that too.
Since we promoted it on the wrong date. Good marketing, good marketing right there. If there's any other questions, we probably have time for one more question. And while you're perhaps typing in a last question, let me just reiterate. Obviously, we have that webinar coming up on the 20th on SEO. That'll be a much deeper dive in relationship to SEO and the benefits of that. We also have, if you are very interested in analytics and finding out more about analytics, we have a 2-day workshop that's coming up in August. It's August 5th, it looks like. 2-day workshop out in Philadelphia, if you feel like taking the trip out to Philly or are on the East Coast already. 2-day analytics workshop that is literally, I've attended a number of these, 2 days of Becky, 8 hours a day, 2 days of Becky, really diving in and sharing information about analytics and really walking you through a very in-depth how-to. It is exhaustive. Most people within the first 2 or 3 hours will say they feel like they're drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot of information, but we also want to invite you to join that as well. And please go out to our website to look at getting registered for that. We have a couple of other questions that are coming in. We're going to see if we can't get through these. Sorry if you typed these in a while ago. We have 2 screens going and I missed a couple. The question is, we have several stakeholder groups in higher education, prospective students, current students, alumni, faculty, staff, community, the list goes on and on. Should we try and develop totally separate strategies, websites, social media channels, and those sorts of things for each group? So, no easy answer. I think first and foremost, you have to prioritize who are your most important stakeholders. And I know it's very difficult to ever sit in a room and say someone is a less important stakeholder than someone else. Because yes, the conversation can be had, that faculty have to be more important than prospective students, because without faculty, there could be no prospective students. That being said, and I hope everyone's comfortable, I'm just going to go ahead and call this out. Revenue is a big part of what drives what happens in higher education. We know that prospective student audiences as well as advancement sides of the shop bring money into the institution. So the big question, do we need separate forms of engagement for all of those separate audiences? Yes, the more you can segment your audiences, the better off you probably are. Now, that being said, you also have to take a look at your human resources and prioritize. So it doesn't mean, okay, just because we're going to do it, I'm going to give you an example. Just because we're going to do a microsite for our admissions shop doesn't mean we also have to do a microsite for our basket weaving program. You do have to, and I'm using obviously some pretty polar examples there, but you do really have to be able to prioritize those things, usually because both financial and human resources are limited. So if you work at an institution where you're in the culture of if we do it for one, we have to do it for all, obviously that is a big, big challenge. What I would highly suggest is asking your leadership to prioritize for you. In the world we live in today with higher education and just the way enrollment is at most institutions, I will tell you most of the schools and most of the senior leadership teams, if really pressed to only have one priority right now, it's usually growing enrollment. And that's usually a priority that most folks on campus can understand. So things that feed that are obviously viewed as being highly important. So I apologize, that's all the time that we have for questions. Do want to just provide you with some further contact information. If you do have further questions, please go out to our website, convergeconsulting.org. You are welcome to email me. There's my email address. You are welcome to give me a call as well if you have further questions or want to dive in further or engage in further conversation. This webinar was really designed to be a high-level conversation about marketing, some of what's new in relationship to higher education marketing. So we hope that you found it helpful. Please look for this webinar coming to your email over the course of the next 48 hours or so. And please, please, please stay online and fill out the follow-up questionnaire. It's just a couple of questions, but it is really helpful to us from a feedback perspective on what we craft further webinars around. We hope to see you on the 20th for the Search Engine Optimization webinar, and we really hope you'll join us in Nashville. We're looking to have a lot of fun at that conference, October 13th to the 15th. We'll see you there. Thanks for spending your time with us today.